What's going on, guys? I think we are live. Let me just check a few things here, and we'll get into it. Alright, I think we're live. There we go. Alright. We're going to work on Omega Red. This is for Marvel Crisis Protocol. And I think I'm only going to go for about an hour because I started this late. But hopefully we can get some cool stuff done here. And I'll just go sort of for like the box art. And we'll have a good time. We'll talk about painting if you join the chat. If nobody makes it to the chat, go ahead and leave some comments down below. And we can talk there. So I think we're going to start with just some contrast paint. And I believe that contrast paint I'm going to start with is going to be Flesh Tears Red. I'm not going to do it's going to be a one coat coverage, but it's not going to be just the one and done. It's just going to be the base coat, and then I'm going to highlight. I think what I'm going to do is highlight it up to like a bright orange highlight in the reds to try to make them really fiery. Since essentially he's just yellow hair and red armor, and everything else is sort of a grayscale. Silvers and pale skin. I might try to add some sort of toxic energy into the skin, but that probably will not be on this stream because we're only going to go about an hour. So it's probably mostly a base coat stream and a chat stream. So let me know what you're working on. I'm using a old beat up ghost paintbrush available in the links below on eBay. This is my own paintbrush company. This is a size 6. I've had this one going for quite some time now. So it's got, they usually start out, perfectly white. But basically, if you're unfamiliar with the Marvel Crisis Protocol, the game is really fun. It is probably the game I'm most excited about right now. I'm excited about AOS 3. Unfortunately, the army I was working on, the OCR Bone Reapers, they don't really get to enjoy any of the AOS 3 new rules. So, I'm not super excited to play them anymore in AOS 3 because their rules didn't really change from their AOS 2, except that they can't do all the AOS 3 stuff, like reactions. So I just don't think they're in a great spot. Not saying competitively, I just mean funsies. I'd like to play the new edition, not basically miss out on all the new rules updates. So Marvel's probably the game I'm most excited about currently. And this game is sort of like an AOS as far as the rules themselves are very simple. And all the complexity is coming in the way of characters. So each character has superpowers, special abilities. They come with special cards you can use during the game. And that's basically where your complexity in the game comes from, which is, I think, a good game design because the rules are fun, fast. The pace of the game is really good. Like, there's no downtime. It's you go, I go. And there's stuff you can do even during your opponent's activations. So there's all kinds of interactive play experience. So I think it is a very, very good game so far. As far as balance, everything seems fine to me so far. I mentioned I'd be a little worried about balance in my sort of review video, but now that I've played more, even on games that, I don't know, maybe the characters themselves didn't feel balanced. As far as our team build, let's say our team composition, like maybe my opponent built a better team than me, or vice versa. Talking out the game a little bit after each battle, I felt like all those games I kind of saw some mistakes, saw some things that I could have done better. and, might have changed the outcome of the game. So I think the balance is pretty good, and I think generally people feel the balance is pretty good. So that's good to know. And I think I'm going to give this brush a rinse. Don't be afraid to rinse your brush from time to time, even if you're using the same color, on the same model, on the same part. You can throw your brush in some water and clean it up a bit. It's going to help save the life of your brush. That's why this one's years old. It's not in the best shape, but it's years old for a low cost, high quality paintbrush. And now that it's on its later days in life, it's a good base coat brush, a good contrast paint brush. That's one thing that actually just in general is nice about the size 6 and the Ghost brushes, is they are unintentionally, because the contrast paint didn't exist when I came out with them yet, but they turned out the size 6 and 5 are just really nice for these contrast paints. They hold a lot of paint, and they're pointy enough to be accurate, so you're not making too much of a mess. But yeah, so I think I might actually even be playing Marvel Crisis Protocol at the LVO in, I believe, January of 2020. So that could be pretty cool. Looks like here they put his knee pads red. I'm not seeing that. That looks definitely like armor. So I don't think we're going to do that red. I think we'll do behind the leg red. But that red knee pad, when I'm looking at the model, does not... Oh, actually... I don't think that's supposed to be... That looks like armor too to me. Maybe that's why they did the knee pad red, just because the leg has a lot of armor. I've done quite a few of these models in different color schemes. They get a little boring or tedious when you see the same ones painted the same way over and over again. And I'm sure this one's going to be no different, but I feel like I could do a pretty good job on the red. So I'm going to go ahead and try to do a good job on the red. And I think we will go ahead and do the red foot. Basically, this is going to be a test or study, you could call it, in red. We're going to try to spend our time on the red. We're going to try to pop the red with bright, vibrant orange red highlights and try to make this character really stand out. That'll be where the difference is in mine versus, say, the box art here, is basically, just with this one coat, you got a pretty good looking red. You could just do a little highlight with a slightly brighter red and call it a day. But we'll try to do a couple. Like I said, I don't know if I'll get into all that tonight, but if not, I'll finish him on stream most likely. That way anybody who watches this video and enjoys it will be able to watch part 2 and see how he turns out. It actually looks like they go ahead and give him red hands too. It's kind of interesting because it's clearly like armor on his hand. He's Zenithal Prime, by the way, with Stynylrez airbrush primer. I added some extra rocks as well onto his base. But it looks like they go ahead and paint his hands. It's kind of hard to see. They paint his hands red. And I think that's because you got the silver shoulder pad, the white skin. You got silver here holding where the tentacles are coming out. So just to break up, or else that would be silver, 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 and then a silver tentacle. So they're just breaking that up. So we'll go ahead and follow along their suggestion. It's funny, with a Zenithal Prime and one red contrast paint, he actually... This is a cool model, by the way. I think he was like $30, which is not terrible. It's maybe... Well, if you're in this hobby, you know miniatures are pretty expensive. But also, when you're talking about, you're getting all the rules for him, the tokens, the special cards, and this game, you really don't need that many models. You could just buy the starter set and probably have a really good time. Or maybe just the starter set and like one or two of your favorite characters. And I think you could really enjoy Marvel Crisis Protocol. But if you have, you know, maybe you watch the X-Men cartoon in the 90s, or maybe you bought some comic books when you were younger, or maybe you still buy some comic books, maybe you are watching all the Marvel movies or superhero movies in general, the game feels very collectible, which is a good thing and a bad thing. Good for the fun, bad for your wallet. But you know, not even counting if you're trying to build a powerful league team or powerful competitive team or try to win in games. But literally, if you just, you know, saw Omega Red in Marvel vs. Capcom. What up, Danny? It is almost, it's 3 minutes from 1 a.m. So I'll probably paint for about an hour and then probably call it at 2. Right now we just put on Flesh Terror Red. We'll probably bring out the wet palette here soon. I'm going to try to get some base coats on. I think we will go for my favorite Vallejo metal color here, if I can find it. We're going to do Jet Exhaust. I love this metal. It's a really, really nice balance of a dark silver. It's light enough that it can take like a Nuln Oil or an Agrax Earthshade or something, but it's dark enough that you can dry brush multiple silvers on top to create depth or highlights. Pretty much all the Vallejo metal color has basically one coat coverage, which is nice. Unfortunately, the Necro paint pot that I designed for the most recent Kickstarter, hopefully coming soon on eBay for the general public after I ship, does not fit them, but that's okay. You don't paint out of the pot in this anyway. For me, metallic paints have one palette and one palette only, and that is the water bottle cap, because you use it once, you throw it away. You don't want metal paint on your wet palette. So here we go. Oh, this one might be chunky. All right, that one's empty or dried out. So luckily I have a backup. Jet Exhaust. Another one. I don't even know if this one's been opened. There is one unfortunate thing with these metal colors. Just buy a few that you like. Don't buy the whole range, because I had a few gunk up on me. What are you working on tonight, Danny? I'll show you one that actually has gunked up. The copper. I don't think I'd buy this one again because of the way it gunked up, and I'll show you how that looks. So you can see it's all dried and gunky in the cap. And I don't know, it just doesn't have the flow anymore. I certainly wouldn't try to airbrush with it anymore. But it's still really, really good for dry brushing. So if you put like a copper down, Agrax Earthshade, dry brush with that, you get a great highlight still. So it's not garbage, but it just doesn't do exactly the same. If you look at, well, I just put a drop on the piece of paper on accident. But if you just look at the fluidity of this metallic paint, right, it's very thin. It holds, or basically has one coat coverage. It's really great. So we'll just trace in these details. The box art, I don't know. Do you think the company here on the box art is only painting to a certain level to not intimidate new players? Because on him here, the belt is just metallic, like the rest of them. The belts on his chest are metallic. I'm not sure why that is. Maybe they're just speeding through these. But we'll probably base it in metallic, and then I'll probably just pick out some colored highlights. Oh, nice. Where are you at? What country are you in? If you told me before, I always forget. Oh, also, this is the new webcam. So this is the Razer Pro. So hopefully the stream looks even better than it used to. And I'm sure there's still room for improvement. But we're working on that. We're trying to improve things. I'm going to be moving at the end of August. And I think when I set up my new place, I'm going to try and set up a really great streaming area. So we're just going to do basically this jet exhaust over all these metals. I'm going to try to stay relatively clean, especially near the hair. I'm sure I'll get some on like I just did while talking. But I would like to just hit that hair with like a yellow Nasdrag contrast paint just to give it that initial yellow base coat with some shadows. Also, as you can tell, I kept the tentacles separate. Surprisingly, on this model, the tentacles are one piece. So that makes them very easy to do in subassembly, which I haven't even primed them yet, but then they glue only into one spot on each hand. So I think that'll be very easy to just plop those in. Chaos Terminator Lord. Oh, nice. Yeah, I've been doing, I'll show you here in a second, but I've been doing some commission terrain. I've been painting up some Marvel guys, and I still got a lot of AdMech to work on. And I've been a painting machine, but when you do commissions, it doesn't feel like you're getting as much done because those things that you get done are out the door and no longer in your collection. But those commissions are buying me new little Marvel characters to paint. So that's fun. I've never really painted a lot of terrain, and recently I've been doing a lot of armored containers. But normally I painted like the Warcry terrain. That's like about it. Yeah, I'm almost a little disappointed at how good the AdMech are in 9th edition. Like, the FAQ didn't really change anything. I almost feel like they're, not even almost, I think they're too strong. I do want to play some more 9th edition games, but hopefully my friends don't get tired of playing against them. All right. It's funny, just, yeah, a couple base coat of silver, a red contrast paint. If you put a yellow contrast paint on his hair, and maybe do something with the skin, and you're on your way to pretty darn good Omega Red. At least, you know, a nice looking tabletop quality if somebody was new to painting. All you got to do is treat it like a coloring book and just sort of try to keep it clean up your mistakes, and you can make these models look really cool. And if you're fans of these characters, I think you'd be really happy with them. Or you can make big splotchy mistakes like I just did. But that's okay. Actually, I don't even need... we'll fill in that area. Was painting this strip across his hand in silver right there. And I thought, I don't even need to do that because I'll probably paint that like leather or something. There we go. Looking good. So you can see here, it's one coat coverage and it's a nice dark silver, which is really a good base coat. And you could darken it further with like your Nuln Oil, but we're not going to do that. We're going to use this as just our sort of darkest dark, and we'll just work up our lights. What I could actually do is dry brush the metallic and then use my highlights of the red to clean up all the parts where the dry brush gets on the red. Or something that might have been smart is if I did the metallic first, dry brushed it, and then did the red. That probably would have been a little better planning. Maybe. I don't know. We don't need to dry brush it, or we can just do it real selectively. If there's a, like on the back of the calf here or the shoulder pad or something. But I don't know. These details I think are small enough that we could probably just highlight regular. Sometimes too, when you're dry brushing, you don't have to savagely run the brush across the model. You could just wipe the majority of the paint off on a paper towel and then just give it some controlled swipes. And it doesn't have to be back and forth 100 times like we often all do. Because I was looking up some Omega Red fun facts on YouTube, I just found out he was actually in the prison in the movie Deadpool 2. So that's fun. So he's actually been in the MCU, I guess. Although I'm not 100% sure if Deadpool counts as the MCU, but I know the next one will. Or I believe he's going to be on Disney. Something like that. I don't know. Alright, I think we got it pretty good. Just trying to see under here. Basically, I'm looking under his leg here. Seeing if I missed anything. Looks like I missed that quite a bit, actually. And these I'm not bringing up to like competition level or whatever you want to call it. But I am, if I do play, man, I put way too much in here. I only need like 3 drops. If I do play at, sorry, I feel like this could be silver right here. His little part on the back of his hand. If I do play at LVO, if I go to LVO, I will probably play Marvel. Because it's a fast, pretty fun game. I think the community of players will be fun to hang out with. But I would be going with the intent on trying to win Best Painted. So I'm not very competitive in gaming, but if I go to an event, I wouldn't mind trying to win Best Painted. So So that's kind of how I look at my Marvel guys. Just going back to a little bit of this red. Just a couple little spots I missed. When I'm thinking about my Marvel guys, I'm thinking, you know, paint them to a high quality tabletop standard. That way I'm in potential runnings for best painted. Well, let's clean up any little edges of the silver we sort of missed. Man, I'm surprised when you work on these Marvel guys, because you're sort of familiar with the somewhat, iconic characters. They really paint up nice and they're fun to paint. They kind of come alive for you just for, like he's already looking decent, and I put 2 colors on him. Oh, I'll show you here. I'm going to go to Nasdrag Yellow, so I've been working on these sort of terrain features, these armored containers and all the little bits and bobs that they come with, like, oil barrels and ammo crates and stuff. So I'm painting up a whole bunch of these for a guy at the local store. So I've been working on those, and that's been slowing down my own painting a bit. Still got quite a bit of AdMech that I'm looking to finish. I put in some pretty good work on the airplane. Still got to wash the metals and stuff, do the wings and whatnot, but got some good base. It's kind of hard to see them. Too zoomed in for the plane, but all right, I'll shake this up. Because this silver's the metal color from Vallejo, it's pretty liquidy. That'll last a little while here in this little cup. So if we need to go back to it, like I just realized I do right away, it's still good for a little while. Basically, I didn't get the lip of the armor. And, I'll be probably a little sloppier with my highlighting, but you want to have pretty distinct separation of colors. Now, a bummer is the part I missed is right next to his hair. So we're going to find out if this Nasdrag Yellow is going to bleed into the hair or into the metal right next to his hair. You know what, just in case, maybe we will wait a minute on Nasdrag Yellow. And I think we'll bring out the wet palette. Actually, I'm going to rotate this. I'm going to put a little bit of, what is this, Celestra Gray. This is one of my favorite GW paints, Celestra Gray. So we'll put some of this on the wet palette here. We're still using that size 6 brush. And let's see if we can't get a coat on the skin here. May need to go to a... Yeah, I probably do. I think I probably need to go to a slightly pointier brush here. Hey, if you're watching the video so far and you're enjoying it, please hit the thumbs up. I think possibly it could be good to leave the red for its own video, and then I could basically do a stream showing and talking about tips for making some cool, interesting reds. What better character to showcase your red skills than a character literally named Omega Red? My paint's not super thin, so it's probably covering up that zenithal I did. I don't care. I'll focus my highlights towards the top when the time comes. And I'm not 100% on what I'm going to actually do with this skin. Seems like sort of a chalky concrete is the box art. This character does have poisonous spores, that like pheromones that come from his body. So I was thinking maybe of putting a little bit of that well, he's got radiation and poison. So I was thinking of maybe adding a hint of green into the metal tentacles when I get to them, to sort of show that hint of radiation or poison. And maybe we'll bring a little bit of that into the skin as well. Try to get into there. Looks okay. Maybe try to clean that up a little later. All right, Danny, have a good one. Take care. Thank you for joining. All right, so we're going to jump to just a slightly smaller, pointier brush. This is size 3. And I'm going to take some of this Celestra Gray, sort of just get this skin that's in between the straps here. Probably can't see it, but oh god, I'm totally off camera. I was gonna say you probably can't see it, but I mean these are pretty much completely silver, just from over painting on them, but it's fine. A lot of it's going to sort of be covered with the tentacles anyway. One thing is I don't think I have enough Celestra Gray. I'm trying to get a little more on the palette here. Don't waste your time with too thin coat nonsense. If you're doing something like this, little part between two straps, you want one thick coat, one and done, get it over with. Just because it makes a good meme, I wouldn't pay much attention to too thin coats, other than the fact that a little bit thinner is a little bit better. Well, a little bit thinner is always going to be better than a little bit thicker, but I think you can, with some painting and paying attention, you can get a lot of this done in one coat. Don't waste your time. You imagine how long it would take to do 2 thin coats on a infantry model for a Warhammer army. Basically, you have to paint the whole entire army twice. It's totally not worth it. Okay, so there we go. We got some skin on. Just a base. I'm going to close the wet palette for a second. Take a sip of my cantaloupe juice. And we'll go to Nasdaq Yellow. So give this a shake. And we'll go back to the 6. It's okay if we get a little sloppy at this stage, because what we're going to be doing is fixing any mistakes in our highlight steps, which is also why you don't need to worry about multiple thin, perfect little base coats unless you're not highlighting. If you're highlighting, you can just fix all that in the next step. Obviously, the less you have to fix, maybe the better, but not necessarily. Who cares? Just keep the paint moving, have a good time. This Nasdaq Yellow will probably show the zenithal highlight pretty good, because the yellow's not going to cover the sort of black leftover primer. But that's fine. That's just going to create a more dynamic contrast of color and value. Which contrast, not talking about contrast paint, but contrast and value is what makes a model pop. Contrast and value, contrast and saturation, contrast colors, textures. This guy's not going to have much contrast in the way of saturation, because he's a superhero and they're often very saturated. They have, super bright reds and yellows and greens. Try to gob on a little bit more yellow underneath, just because it's not going to affect that black primer very much. And look at that. Boy, do I love me some Nasdaq Yellow. This color is so fun. It's such a good base yellow. It gives you that yellow to brown color. You can highlight it with like ivory colors or cream colors, khaki colors, bone colors. I've done it. I love using it. It's so much fun. Just put it on a model and start highlighting with some different colors that you got and have a good time, and I think you'll enjoy it as well. There we go. Now I think we can move to guess we could do the straps. Can't really tell what color the straps are on the little picture. He's got a little omega symbol on his chest there, so just paint that in real quick. You know what I think could be fun, which might be a absolute mistake, but we're going to do it anyway, is we're going to put Plague Bearer Flesh, which is this sort of green contrast paint, on the Celestra blue skin. Now the reason we're going to put this color onto the blue skin is because, for one, we're just going to see what happens, because it might be good, it might not. Either way, it doesn't matter, because like I said, we're going to fix anything we don't like as we build through the model and highlight the model, so who cares. But also, green is a contrast of red, so if the radiation, poison effect makes the red pop even more, then I think that's worth a shot. So, gonna go ahead, Plague Bear Flesh over the skin, and I am gonna use the little brush, size 3 here. I'm gonna do it pretty controlled, not totally covering him, just tinting his skin green. So this isn't your... Basically, I'm using the contrast paint as a glaze, not like a one-coat wash, but I am covering all of the skin, so however you want to think about that. It's not as a ton, but it's enough to sort of cover all that skin tone. I'm going to say right off the bat, I think I kind of like that quite a bit. Gives it kind of that sickly green hint. And then when we highlight over it and basically hide or remove a lot of that green undertone, it'll just be a hint of it. It should give us a pretty cool effect. And it simply being on the model helps with the contrast against the red. If you want to know anything about color theory, the main thing you should know without a second thought is complementary colors. Red and green are complementary colors, which means they sort of are going to vibrate against each other side by side. If you mix them together, they're going to make sort of a dark, muddy color. If you play with variations and like saturation, like if you put a bright green next to a bright red, you get a silly like sort of Christmas time decoration. But if you start playing with your saturations, you know, if your red is a earthy brick red and then your green's bright, it could look magical or poison or, you know, energy based, something like that. My favorite's blue and orange. You've probably seen me paint it. If you follow me on Instagram, you've seen me paint a lot of things blue and orange. Just a little color theory example here. This model is blue and orange, right? The metallics are kind of this rusted orange. There's an orange energy thing on his gun. His robes are blue. There's kind of brass colors. So that, yeah, there's a little bit of green, but there's also a desaturated red. That's another complementary color, a bright green with a desaturated red on the staff. But for the most part, the majority, plus, sorry, there is also kind of a green goo on the base. But this is basically a blue and orange complementary paint scheme. Hopefully that makes sense. All right, let's go take a sip of the tea and move on. I think we will... I don't know, what do we want to work on next? Oh, let's go back to our silver and clean up a few things. It's mostly stuff from views that you'd never see during the game, but, you know, might as well clean it up if we notice. Right now I'm sort of just looking for areas to potentially fix. This metallic paint is pretty reflective. So sometimes bright reflection will look like an actual area that's not painted. But all right, I think we'll go to highlight the silvers now. And I think we're gonna go with, actually maybe we'll just mix it. We'll go with like duraluminum, which is a metal color here. I'm gonna just put it right into this pot. Water bottle cap, which is the jet exhaust. And that's quite a bit brighter, but whatever was remaining is sort of gonna mix in. And we'll get sort of nice dark color. You can see it's still got a good flow. I think how we're going to do this is I'm going to wet this paper towel. And I'm going to use it to sort of keep my brush wet, the paint extra wet. Kind of control how much paint and moisture is on the brush. And this is sort of going to give us the start of our silver highlight. You don't have to be too careful here. It just depends on how subtle you want these transitions to be in the metals. It's basically like, ooh, try to impress your friends with a slight transition of silvers. And guess what? They will not be impressed. They don't care. At least my friends certainly don't. And I'm not good enough to win a Golden Demon, so the judges won't care either. But we know we did it, and we tried. We are sort of trying to pay attention to where the light might actually be hitting the metals, not just highlighting everything equally. If you're watching in the future, make sure you comment, like, comment, subscribe. If you're playing Marvel Crisis Protocol, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the game. I think it's really good. If you're like a store owner, you might want to consider getting this game in your store because it is really taking off at our local store. There's probably 15, 20 people buying and playing this game every week right now. It's crazy. So he's sort of controlling our silver here with this wet paper towel. We're not blending it. We're not wet blending it. We're sort of just smearing it over top. I mean, it's layering, but that might confuse people. It's just sort of like a thin smear of lighter silver over. And look how much he's shiny now. That looks pretty shiny to me. And then I think we can go pure duraluminum. Back to the duraluminum. We'll see if that... So you can see that should be even a little brighter here. Kind of loaded up on our damp paper towel. and just sort of put this where we think maybe the lights would be the brightest. It's almost like non-metallic metal, but with actual metallics. Gives us a lot of interest in our silvers without a whole lot of work. None of that non-metallic metal nonsense that we're not going to do for gaming models. And also because we're just simply not good enough to do it. But we also have no interest in learning how to do it because it basically only looks good on photos and it's not that interesting in real life. Unless there's very few people that are actually good enough on non-metallic metals, and I promise you it's probably not the people you think it is. Because a lot of that non-metallic metal stuff is heavily altered photos, and if you ever get a chance to go to like a Crystal Brush or something, you'll almost be disappointed when you have seen models on Instagram and then you see them in real life and you're like, oh, that's some heavy photo editing. Not saying they're not amazing still in person, but they don't. That non-metallic metal is, I promise you, not as cool in person. Well, scratch that. It's still cool. I don't know how to say it. It's not gonna shine and pop the way you think it does on a phone screen. In real life, it's just not like that. Not as cool as our Omega Red armor here. Look at that shine. Woo! Got that shine on the Omega Red. That's not even, we didn't even gloss wash that. Maybe we will. But Alright, let's do the skin. I think we'll save the red for, I think I'll do the skin and the hair. Maybe these straps. And then I think I'll just do the red tomorrow. Because I do want to actually try to go to bed somewhat at a reasonable time. Alright, we're going to bring out the old wet palette here. Some of it's probably going to be cut off from you, but I guess I can move it in. Alright, we're going to go back. Let's see, the skin is Celestra Gray with Plague Bearer Flesh on it. So I think we just go back to the Celestra Gray. Get some of that on our wet palette here. I don't know. Part of me, so Celestra Gray is it's a beautiful, like, blue-gray. But part of me kind of wants to bring, like, some life into the skin with maybe some, like, more skin-like tones. So I'm kind of questioning my Celestra Gray. Another option, which I think actually might be pretty good, would be Rakarth Flesh. A beautiful color, Rakarth Flesh, but maybe one of the worst offenders of all time for a paint that is going to dry out as soon as you open it and turn to crap. But we'll see if we can get a little bit of life out of it. So here it is. It's Rakarth Flesh. And what we'll do... Oh, we got some. This one's pretty decent. It's almost the same value as the Celestra. Like if that was a black and white photo, I think it would be kind of hard to tell these two apart. It's almost like the warm version of that. So let's see if we can't get, just in case we need a little palette cup here, I'm going to go ahead and put some AK Interactive Ultra Matte Varnish into the little water bottle cap. with some distilled water. I use distilled water on the wet palette to prevent mold. Basically the chance of mold. I think we could sort of mix these two around, see what we come up with. There we go. So that's going to give us somewhere in between of a somewhat of a flesh tone, I guess. Paint's pretty thin. We're okay if, well, 100% we want to not cover up all the green. Because if we covered it all up, what would be the point of doing it? So we'll try to leave a little bit of that green in the recesses of his skin. Kind of like those deep kind of crevices between his biceps and tricep. And that's going to leave a little bit of, like I said, he has sort of a poison aura or pheromones. Also like radiation. So we're kind of hinting at that with this sort of sickly green tone. I probably should have looked up some actual like comic book images of Omega Red, just to see how maybe some comic artists have treated him as far as his skin tone. Because maybe there is an actual color he sometimes has in the recesses that's not green and I could have went with, but whatever. Green's a contrast to red, or I mean a complementary color to red, so it's going to be a good choice regardless. Color theory tells us it's a good choice. It doesn't matter actually what the character is, say, supposed to have. There we go. So that's infinitely more interesting to me already. Let's take, this one is Indian Shadow. I'm going to put my Indian Shadow on the wet palette. You're not going to be able to see where it is. It's all the way over there. I like to keep my reds and my, well, basically my flesh tone brown colors over here. I'm just kind of doing it over here for you guys, but we only need a little touch of this. And we're taking that Indian Shadow there, and we're going to mix in our sort of flesh tone with that Indian Shadow red. And we're going to put this on the elbow. This sort of gives us the illusion that maybe there's blood closer to the surface of the skin there, whatever, like knuckles, elbows, faces. Like his nose might have a little bit more pink in it. So that's what we're doing here. I'm going to put it on his like lower mouth and chin, because I don't think he has like a 5 o'clock shadow or anything. If you wanted to do like a 5 o'clock shadow, you would make that kind of a blue-gray. But I don't think this guy has facial hair. Maybe we'll put a little bit on some of these bigger muscle groups. Okay, and now we'll take a little bit more. This one's quite a bit redder. I'm going to try to get the lip. I got it, but I also filled his mouth up. And I'll get the elbow again. Turning it more pink. These little subtle hints of color add, it took no extra time, but it's kind of like a, it just adds a lot to the model. I'm going to sort of wet our brush and see if we can't kind of clean out his mouth a little bit. And let's see if we can't take another touch of that Indian shadow color and see if we can't get his bottom lip. We sort of got it. Whatever. All right, now it's one of the color combinations that GW does where they highlight Rackard flesh with pallid witch flesh. And in this case, we're going to do the same. So we're going to go with pallid witch flesh. Normally on my palette, let me just show you here. I'm doing, normally on my palette here, this would be, demonstrate with this color. This would be my black here. And this would be like grays. These would be like ivory, an off-white. White would be here. And like kind of off-white colors, bone colors. Yellows and reds would be here. Oh. Then all the blues would be down here. And then this area here would be flesh tones. So I do the same way every time. These colors, there's just not a lot of them on the palette, so I'll just mix paint right over top of it as I go. Because this is a brand new sheet of palette paper, and I usually use these for at least a month, probably. So the pallid witch flesh, we're going to put it up over in the sort of off-white area. But it's pallid witch flesh. And I'm going to bring it in down here with our sort of mixture of the Rackard flesh and the Celestra gray. And we're going to see if we can't get some little highlights on his face. That one was awful. That one was pretty bad too. See if we can't get a little bit of highlights on the skin here. Luckily, when you do a bad highlight on the face like I just did, if your paint's thin, it's not going to be overly terrible looking, and at the very least, it should be easy enough to fix if we don't like it once it's more dry. Sort of avoiding the kind of pink elbows. We want those to be more pink. There we go. That's not so bad. And I think we'll go almost pure pallid witch flesh and just get like the bridge of his nose. This is a size 3 ghost brush. So I try to put a dot on the bridge of his nose, a dot on the tip of his nose, a dot on each nostril, a dot on each eyebrow. Dot on his chin. Maybe his upper lip. maybe a couple of the kind of pure pallid witch flesh dots on maybe some of these big muscle groups where we want sort of a highlight. And yeah, I think we got a pretty good looking Omega Red skin. Like I said, I'm not going like super duper crazy competition level here, but yeah, we're trying. Let me grab I need like a teeny tiny brush. I'm gonna go with the Ghost Tiny. This is one of the new paint brushes coming out soon. This Kickstarter will be shipping soon. You can barely even see the brush there. Let's see how bad I messed this up. I'm gonna go into the Celestra Gray part that looks like maybe it didn't get too much color into it. It's not too bad. Alright, so we got the eyes there. I'm going to go back into our color here. I think the side of his face here could use a little more highlighting. Maybe a little bit on his neck. I don't think his neck necessarily needs light, but the reason we're putting it there is to say we didn't miss it. It's like we're showing the viewer, hey, we saw that. We didn't miss it. We did something. There we go. I think we got a pretty decent looking skin here, actually. So, let's go with our trusty friend Averland Sunset, which is a pretty cool dark yellow from Games Workshop. You can see that's got some classic Games Workshop gunkiness going on, but there's still some good paint there. We're going to put it up here where we would actually normally keep our yellows on our wet palette, because as we paint, maybe I'll zoom out in the future, and then that way you could see more of the wet palette. But basically we're going to get his sideburns, I guess. This is also the color we're going to use to clean up areas where, say, metallic paint or red paint got into the hair. It looks like he has like sideburn things going. I'm not sure if those are. They might. It doesn't look like they're painted like sideburns on the box art. So these might be wrong. If you're more familiar with Omega Red, let me know if those aren't sideburns. I'll have to look it up kind of after the fact and maybe change it if need be, but I don't really want them to be metal, but maybe they are. Oh, we got a little bit of yellow on our metal there. On the sort of ponytails and stuff, you can kind of use the side of your brush. There's no right or wrong answer here. You're just trying to get some yellow, lighten up this ponytail, basically. Top knot, whatever it's called. Sort of avoiding, you don't want to go too crazy underneath. Could put some, but it's actually not bad to leave it dark underneath. because we're going to try to create a pretty nice fiery red on his armor or bodysuit, I think we're going to highlight our yellow hair in more of like a cream color. So we got sort of his yellow hair going there. And basically any kind of cream color will do. Let's see what we got. You can go with like a bone color. I think I have one I want to try, which is Vallejo model color Iraqi sand. You can see it up there. This is where kind of the off-whites and cream bone colors go, but I am going to pull it down here. You know what? It doesn't look like it's... looks like it's the same value. So what we'll do... I'm going to put a touch of ivory onto the palette. So we're going to mix our sort of Iraqi sand into our yellow, and then we're going to take some ivory, sort of lighten that up. So we're getting sort of like a yellow, sort of bone kind of color. Think of it as like a, I don't know what you would call it. I guess like a, yeah, like a bone type color, but with a hint of yellow. And sort of just highlighting across the top. We're not being overly careful, we're just trying to get some kind of variations into his hair. Then we could take actually a little more ivory, lighten that up even more, and just put it like around his face, maybe some lights across the top, maybe a little bit on the ponytail here. Sort of that final little reflective kind of highlight that hair has sometimes. Especially luxurious, shiny hair like this guy. There we go. So he's got sort of a light blonde hair going. Cool. All right, so we got the tiniest little dot on his eyes. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use a wash to sort of darken the eye sockets and the inside of the mouth. You know what? Actually, let's close this palette because we're almost done for the night. I'm going to go back to sort of this dark silver color and clean up where I got hair on the metal. This is sort of what a lot of painting is to separate, you know, maybe a good painted miniature versus a bad one. It's just take that time to try to clean up those lines. If you got a little bit of oh, I gotta go back to the wet palette because now I think I just noticed I got actually some metal on the hair I need to clean up real quick. There we go. And actually, it's not too bad because it kind of reintroduces some yellow back into our hair. Cool. I think that came out pretty good. Alright, now we'll just put a little bit of a wash into the mouth and eyes. And then he will be done for tonight. And I think tomorrow, hopefully, get a chance to paint all the red. Normally I can knock one of these guys out in one sitting, or about 2 sittings, so this one appears to be a 2-sitting guy. We just need a light wash here, so I'm gonna go with soft tone. Nope, I'm not. I'm gonna go with my super favorite, which is Death Shroud Clear, which I'll show you. This paint is amazing from Games Workshop. If you don't have Death Shroud Clear, pick it up. It's a lot like a water-based version of the Tamiya panel liner. It doesn't automatically flow into all the recesses, but it does not stain the surfaces very much. It's super high gloss, so it finds those recesses without staining the surfaces, so you can put it over reds or yellows and it'll get you kind of that black lining effect. Obviously, because it is a high gloss finish, you are going to want to varnish your model if you use this. It's going to look awful if you just put it on and leave it, but once you varnish the model, especially if you varnish it with like the Ultra Matte varnish from AK Interactive, and even out all of those variations and finish of, you know, gloss and not gloss and whatnot, it's going to be really good. You're going to love it. I love this paint so much. Nobody uses it. They've never even mentioned it on any of their videos. I don't know why, but... So we're just going to put a little bit in his mouth. Sort of darkens up around the teeth if the sculpt is there. We're going to put a little bit in the eye socket. Basically gives him guy liner. And I'll put in that eye socket too. And without even painting, those areas, we just added a lot of definition. Other areas you could use it would be like, I'm not going to do it right now, but where a surface meets another, like I could put it here where the arm pad is meeting his forearm to darken up that recess. Maybe we'll do that later after we get some of this red done. All right. And then with a teeny tiny brush, you could go back in and try to pick out like some teeth or the eye again if you need to. But these models, you can't even see it on the stream, but I promise it looks a little better now having the dark around the recesses of the eye. There you have it. Omega Red. I mean, more or less, you could call them done. But we are going to paint all that red and those straps. And then he'll be done for us. Although we do got to do these tentacles. But hopefully you enjoyed this one. Please like and comment on the video. And I'll see you in the next one. Please subscribe if you're into painting videos or hobby videos in general. I try to put up quite a bit. I have ghost brushes available on eBay if you want a set. Check the links below. These are the original all-white hobby paint brushes. None of that nonsense that recently came out from Games Workshop. There you go. All white. Beautiful, beautiful ghost paintbrush. Made by me, a one-person small business. So thank you so much if you decide to check it out or support. It means a lot to me. And I will see you in the next one.